welcome along to this new video. In this video I want to talk to you today about the 4K version of the Argento Cut of Dawn of the Dead. Now this is the first one I've watched in this box set, and it's probably my least known to me cut, although I have seen it before. And I wanted to go into it because on my unboxing of this set, which I'll leave in the description down below, people were obviously mentioning the Argento Cut, and I thought, well, I tell you what, I haven't seen it for that long and I can't remember that much about it. I'll check that out first and just see what happens. And I had a really good time with it, which I'll go about. I've wrote some notes about it, so I'll go into that in depth in the notes. Forgive me if I look at these notes from time to time. I just got to try and jog my memory on things that I made that really stood out to me in this cut. So this is on disc 3 of the 4K box set here, and I've got to say that the picture quality is just absolutely amazing, but we'll get into that in a minute. But the people who are probably waiting for this from Amazon, I would imagine you're going to get yours this week, and probably maybe on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I think you're going to have you're going to have a great time with this box set. I can't wait to see some of my favorite channels unboxing this, because I just want to see their reception of it. I mean, my hand's hurting holding this up, my arm's getting sore, because it's just a solid block of zombie goodness. Okay, so anyway, the Argento Cut. Excuse me. What did I think of it? Well, I took some notes down, and this is what I've ascertained from watching the Argento Cut. The soundtrack was in one track mono, or 2.0 stereo, or 5.1 surround. Now I chose 5.1 surround. Is it the best one? I'm not too sure, because it's the one I always pick. I always try and pick the best soundtrack to go with the movie, because maybe in previous times releases it hasn't had a 5.1 mix, what I've heard anyway. It might have only been in 2.0 stereo, but I had a really good time with it. And also the running time of this version of this film is 1 hour 59 minutes. The other ones are longer. Okay, so I'll get more about why this one's shorter in these notes. Excuse me. So anyway, the presentation is from a 4K scan of the interpositive. Now I don't know anything about movie treatments of the negatives and what versions and dupe negatives. I don't really understand them, if I'm honest. But this 4K scan of the interpositive, I've wrote something down to say what an interpositive is, and it says they are usually in better physical condition than other elements. They preserve shadow detail better. Scratches appear as black defects with less objectional than white defects found on the negatives. So what it sort of says as well, that the interpositive, I think, is struck. Please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I'm just trying to. I would love to know a bit more about this. But the way I picked it up is that a negative gets an interpositive struck from it, and the interpositive gets away. It's more like a sort of backup copy in my mind, and because it's a backup copy, it hardly gets touched. And I don't know why there was no original negatives for this, but this interpositive negative could have been in that much of a good condition that it might have been better than the negatives, if that makes any sense. That's the way I'm kind of half picking it up. But what I can say is that this picture is pin sharp, and it's also crystal clear. I can't see any dirt or any artifacts or anything on it. And I can see that the colours are really good. The dark, when it said shadow detail, yes, I can agree with that. Some of the shadow details look really good in this film. So for me, I thought that this one would be the best looking one in here. And at this point, well, it's the best looking one because it's the only one I've seen. But I'll start going against the other cuts when I watch them and see if this one comes out on top for picture quality. But to be honest, the picture quality is solid, and I think that I was surprised at how good it was actually. The colours are bright. The colours are bright and warm. It's like a warm film to be. Sometimes when I used to watch this back in the day, it used to seem to be a bit of a cold film. I know it was filmed in December, so obviously that's why it looked a little bit cold, but this film at this point on the Argento Cut seems to have a warm feel to it. It doesn't take anything away from the film. It doesn't make it seem like false. but it really adds to it for me, and it adds a bit of a especially skin detail, colours of clothes are just they really stand out. They're so vibrant as well. Obviously 70s fashion is very vibrant anyway, but this one really stood out for me. So colours, the sound was great, the colours are they really do stand out, and also I found that the shadow detail, as I mentioned in there, I can say that I do have some standout times when, especially when Tom Savini is in the mall and he's hiding behind things, and you can see sort of shadows coming, and he's just picked out in the shadow, hiding behind pillars and stuff like that. It looks really good actually. So for me, and also, as you know, Dario Argento is massively into his colours. Now I know that he didn't shoot this film, but it seems as if, I don't know if he had any way of doing this, but it seems as if the colours of Dario Argento seem to just be in there for some reason. I think you'll know when you see it, unless they were always in there. As I say, when I check the other ones out, maybe I'll see them in there, but it just seemed to have a bit more of a Dario Argento palette to it, if that's possible. So I've put down here, it seems to play as an Argento film rather than a Romero film. So this cut here, if you didn't know anything about Dawn of the Dead and you just said this film's called Zombie, it's from Italy, you wouldn't really pick it as being anything but an Argento film. It's got a very Italian feel to it, although obviously it's just the English actors or the American actors doing the same that they would have done for George A. Romero. But it's amazing how much of this film has been changed because of the way Argento cut it. Like I say, he didn't direct it or anything. He didn't have any, although he might have something to do with the story, he didn't have any input into what the director shot, but he also took what he wanted to, remixed it in a way, and he's done a really good job of changing the sort of general feeling of the movie from having the comedy aspects of the films, which is quite good. I like that, the comedy aspects of it. That seems to be completely gone from this version, and it makes it a bit more bleaker. It makes it a bit more like an action film. So there's not a lot of grain in here in the film. There is grain in the film, but it's very pleasing on the eye. Now people might say, well, how can grain be pleasing on the eye? Well, I think film grain looks quite good if it's done correctly. If it's really noisy, it looks horrendous, but if it's there, as it is in this one, it's quite fine and you can see it. Now the good thing about seeing film grain is you know that the picture will not be smoothed out. If they've got rid of all the film grain, then the people would have like DNR in the faces and they wouldn't have the detail that they've got in this film. So for me, I was pleased to see the grain, but also I could appreciate the grain because it wasn't in your face. It wasn't, noisy grain. It was really nice actually. It was quite fine, and it's quite pleasing on the eye. If you can understand that one. The Goblin Soundtrack can be found on quite a few Italian horror films. Now this is strange because you do get the complete soundtrack to the Goblin music from the Argento Cut. Now there's no sound cues of any of the other Dawn of the Dead in the Dawn of the Dead movie, especially the gonk at the end, the theme, the end tune that's playing out, which I think is a brilliant song, and I've got as my ringtone now. It hasn't got any of that on it, which I do miss to a certain extent. But the fact that Goblin's there throughout, it makes it kind of gets the movie together. It kind of keeps it in line with itself, and I do appreciate the fact that the Goblin music was added to all of the soundtrack, which makes it just come together. When you've got the soundtrack here, you've probably got the soundtrack as a sort of side note to quite a few Italian horror films. I know that I'm thinking Zombie Creeping Flesh off the top of my head. That borrows or lends from the Argento Cut quite a bit, this Goblin soundtrack. So don't be surprised if you hear that soundtrack all over the place. It's a great soundtrack as well. Really enjoyed it. And also, that would be good. You're getting sort of say 5 films for one on the soundtrack, if that makes sense. So the picture quality highlights for me was on Flyboy when he's flying the helicopter. You can see beads of sweat on his face, and I mean they're really detailed. It's quite surprising how much detail they can get into this film. the blue SWAT suits, which I think everybody from any film that uses this type of premise of a zombie outbreak, especially in Italy, everyone used to wear a blue SWAT suit in the movies, Zombie Creeping Flesh, hello again. And the really blue, they really stand out. In fact, everything stands out in here colour-wise. So yeah, so a couple of things that I've noticed is that, and I think I was talking a long time ago to my good friend Horgoss73, and he said, as well as I thought, that there's more gore at the end of this film, and maybe so you get some gore in this cut that you don't get in the other cuts. Now I'm not too sure about that. That's just something that's in my mind, and I think I might be right about that, but I can't be 100% on that. So you may get a few extra shots of gore. It's very gory towards the end, and I would have to watch the other two to find out if those gore things were in, especially like the Cannes cut. I would imagine could have them gore scenes in. I don't think they're in the theatrical cut. Speaking of which, also what's not in this version but in the theatrical cut is when the helicopter zombie gets the top of his head chopped off and sliced off. That's completely missing from the Dario Argento cut. He probably didn't like it. Now it does look a bit, I remember when we were in the cinema, me and my friends were watching this on re-release in the 80s, and everybody burst out laughing when the zombie with a square head looking like a skinny Frankenstein got the top of his head sliced off. We all cheered when he got it sliced off, and it looks really good, but his square head does make it look a little bit comical, and maybe that's why Dario Argento decided to just cut it out completely. So it's quite strange that really good, clever effect went. Also, I would say I'm not a fan of when I've got a film that I'm so used to seeing and it gets tinkered with, or it gets altered and it gets changed into a different style of film. And maybe that put me off the Argento cut for quite a while, because I'd saw Dawn of the Dead that many times that I thought I didn't want to go for that. But I've got to admit that this is really done really well. It's like a sort of an action film. It's taken out all the sort of best parts of Dawn of the Dead, got rid of all the humour, which I do like, and put it all together, shortened the running time down. In fact, it flew over the 1 hour 59 minutes. When I looked at it, I thought it's only been on for about an hour and a half. But it was just so good the way that they'd done it. So I will take my hat off to Dario Argento for this one. The way he's remixed this film in a way, I think it's worked really well. And you've got this. It's funny that I would say that the theatrical cut and the Cannes cut are quite close together. Obviously, the Cannes cut, you'll see the extra bits. The extra bits, I think, is about maybe 12 minutes, and you can see them a mile off if you're familiar with the theatrical cut. But also, the Argento cut is kind of like a complete different film. It's not as if you're just getting a slightly different version and with a few things added and a few things taken out. This does play like a different film for me. So also another thing that I noticed was in two scenes, and it's not, if this happened all the way through the film, it would be really off-putting. There's a very slight echo on some of the audio. Some of the talking between Roger and Peter on the rooftop meant that they it kind of, when they're still finished talking, you would hear that echo of what they were saying. And also right at the end of the film, when he was towards the end of the film, when he's saying, when there's no room on earth, when there's no room in hell, the dead shall walk the earth. That carries on a little bit as well, and it does stand out. But I checked out the other cuts on the other movies, and it doesn't happen at all. I don't know why that happens. It's not anything that's going to say, oh, this disc's faulty, I want the disc swapped. It's not that. I just thought I'd mention it as a sort of weird thing that happened, which I was quite surprised at. But that's just me looking into things and writing things down that I did spot in this. Maybe it's been there all the time. I don't know. So yeah, so that's what I picked up of the Argento cut. In short, it looks great, it sounds great, it plays great, the music in it is great. It's a welcome addition to this set. At first I thought, well, the Argento cut will be alright. It's not a bit of an oddity, but I would kind of put it to one side and watch it every now and again. But when I watched all the other ones, maybe the Argento cut might be my favourite version of this film. So anyway, what do you think? Have you got this disc? Do you think the same thing about that? Do you think the Argento cut was better than the Romero cut? Which is funny that I'm even saying that, because one part of me would say, at first would say, forget the Argento cut. But I'm not going to say that at this point. Okay, so thanks once again for watching, and you take care, and I'll see you next time.